going to call this?
I don't know. What should we call it?
I don't know.
Got any ideas?
Something American Greed. You got to do something with American Greed.
The American Greed episode.
Yeah, something.
Narrated by yours truly, Matthew B. Cox.
Secret Service Special Agent Andrea Peacock is on the tail of Matt Cox and Rebecca Hogg, two of the most wanted financial fugitives. But the Secret Service is never sure where they are or what names they're using.
It was impossible to predict what identity he would use next.
Cox has as many
Jesus.
as 50 aliases.
Joseph
they have
Marion
all of
Carter
them.
Jr., Philip Daniel Morgan, Corbin Blair Thomas, Matthew Bevan Cox,
That's not an alias.
Gerald Scott Kugner,
That's an alias.
Walter Andrew Holcomb, Richard Paul Grahocki Jr., James Franklin Paig.
Did they do
In the
Joseph
summer
Carter?
Of 2004,
I had Joseph Carter. I had a bunch
Cox
of
and Hogg pull into Columbia, South Carolina, where Bridget Brown and her husband are trying to sell their home.
Well, this is a flyer that the realtor produced to show our home when we were trying to sell it. It shows a quintessential suburban neighborhood and little house on a pond.
Try as they may, the home won't sell.
It was a stressful time because I was traveling weekly to Augusta already with my son for his surgical treatments.
Their son Colby is sick, and they need to move closer to care in
What was wrong
Augusta,
with him?
Georgia.
I have no idea.
The old house continues
I
to
didn't know
sit
they had a sick
unsold.
son until
The
an
Browns
article came
decide
out
to try
a
something
year later.
new.
A friend of ours recommended that we offer owner financing. He said that that would make the home competitive and also open it up to people that previously could not have afforded a conventional loan.
Just 1 week after the Browns offer owner financing, the phone rings.
That night it was Gary Sullivan, or the man we thought was Gary Sullivan,
No, it
that
wasn't.
came and viewed the home.
No, it wasn't.
Matt Cox has a new alias.
Who was it?
It was there. I never talked to her or the husband until the day of we went to closing. What happened was I had hired an attorney. I had hired I got a realtor.
Yeah.
We went to a bunch of different properties, and properties that people were willing to owner finance. So I would walk in the property. I look around. I say, okay, great. What do they want for it? $110,000. Put $110,000 contract on it. And they go, okay. And I want them to owner finance it, 10% down. No problem. I leave. I put half a dozen contracts out.
Okay.
One of them, I got two houses. Got a house for $110,000, which I borrowed like I bought 4 or 5 loans for around $95,000 on, like $500,000, like $400,000 on one house. Their house was going for $225. So I go in, I walk in, I look at the house, I go, great. How much do they want? $225. Let's say $225. $225,000. I say, okay, great. Put a contract in. I'll put 10% down. They go, okay, no problem. But they got to owner finance it. No problem. So they call me back. Realtor calls back. Hey, well, how's this going to work? Well, I talked to the realtor for a little bit. Here, I'll do this. Put 10% down. He goes, okay, no problem. He calls back and says they'll do it. It's a little bit longer, dragged out. The phone call's a little bit longer, but whatever. Within a few hours, like that night, like after I see the house, like that night or the next night, they're ready to sign a contract.
Okay.
I've never talked to them.
Okay.
I don't know anything about any sick child. Nobody was there. She says, at one point, that like she was there when I walked in and Rebecca Houck walked in. But I had a male realtor that walked in with me and no one was in the home. Nobody was there. So maybe she's misremembering it. I don't know. Just like she said, I called her. I didn't call her. You had a realtor.
You calling her a liar?
I'm saying that's not what happened. I don't know what she's saying. I'm saying I talked to my realtor. My realtor talked to their realtor. Their realtor at some point contacted me. I never talked. First of all, if you have a realtor, you don't talk to the buyer. You talk. The realtors are talking. That's what you're paying them for. You're not talking to them. I never talked to her till the day of the closing. So then we have the day of the closing, and I walk in. This part I do remember because she said this a few times. I walk in. We all meet. Hi, how are you? One of the things they had wanted me to do was to write out all like 18 months worth of checks or something, or like a year's worth of checks, so they could just deposit them. And I had suggested that. So I write all the checks out, January, February, March, whatever, here. And she says, and as we're talking, I remember her saying, she was joking around about, we said something. And then when I was talking to her, I had Invisalign in the braces.
Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry, I have these braces in, and I like popped them out. And she goes, oh, you got it? Were your teeth messed up? I go, oh, they're a little bit tweaked. I was trying to fix them up. I said, you know, I made a crack. I said, listen, when you're 5'6", I said, everything's got to be perfect. I said, the hair, the face, the teeth, the wardrobe, the bank account, everything. She starts laughing. And I remember her husband was like, he's like 6 foot tall. I go, who was a doctor, Dr. Brown. I go, Dr. Brown wouldn't know anything about that. And she looks at him and laughs. And so I write the checks, and she says something about when we give out the document, like we give out our driver's license, she says something about, oh yeah, something. Yeah, I had my identity stolen one time. And I like looked at her like what'd you say? Like, fuck. And I was like, oh, okay, really? And she's like, yeah. And I'm sitting there, but I remember thinking just that the idea that she had said it.
Yeah.
And she says, in one of these interviews somewhere, maybe not this one, but one of them, she says, he looked at me with this shocked look on his face, like when I mentioned that my identity had been stolen, something like that. Anyway, so we all signed the documents. I give them my 10% down, which was like $25,000. And I leave. I make a few payments. I satisfy the loan. I borrow like $1 million or so on their house. I pull out the money. You know, I get caught in the bank. The whole thing. About a year later, Fortune magazine comes out, and it says that I stalked them because I knew that they had a sick child and they were desperate to sell the house. I didn't know you were desperate. I didn't know you had a sick child. I didn't know you. I was driven around by a realtor. I put a contract on the house. I borrowed the money. What I did was wrong. I absolutely went to prison for that. I am sorry for that. I owe them. She's going to say that I like stole $200,000 from them or something. No, I didn't. You had a mortgage on the house for $201,000 is what you owed. Sold the house for $225,000. I put down $25,000. You owner financed $200,000. You had what's called a wraparound mortgage. I make payments to them. They make payments to their lender. You didn't have any equity. You were getting money to pay I owe you $200,000 in equity that you don't possess because the equity is actually held by the lender.
Right.
So I'm paying you. You're paying the lender. You don't have any equity. You owe $200,000. Now I owe you.
Once you bounce, they can just go back to paying their own mortgage.
Right. So, well, they could foreclose. They
can still foreclose on you.
They can foreclose on me. Take that. They did They foreclosed, took the house back, and resold the house.
Oh shit. Okay.
But I do owe them about $10,000 because they hired an attorney because I encumbrances their title. So I absolutely owe them the $10,000, and they're on my restitution payment for $10,000. That's what I owe them.
Okay.
But here she says, oh, he took. I think she says I stole $200,000 from her or something. But you didn't have $200,000 in equity. It's just one of those things that's tweaked. Not that what I did wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that they just a little bit here, just enough to make you like I've said before. It's like me arguing the point is like saying, I didn't murder 10 people. I only murdered 7.
Yeah.
It's okay. Well, I'm still a scumbag. I'm not saying nobody's saying I'm not a scumbag. I'm just saying I didn't murder 10 people. Right. I murdered 7.
Which is why we're doing this.
My bad.